So in the previous clip, we talked about the perceptual process, the stages of our perceptual process. That's sensation, organization, interpretation, and evaluation. What I want to get into with this clip is talk a little bit about the influences to perception. And those are preconceived notions, kind of our own automatic default attitudes that kind of warp our sense of interpretation. And the organization interpretation stage are directly affected by these types of barriers. There are three influences that I want to talk about specifically in this clip that have to do, or actually that have to interfere perhaps with our ability to go through and discern the truth or whether somebody is deceiving us, okay? So the first one is this idea of the implicit personality theory. And implicit personality theory, the three words there, we kind of know what that's all about. Implicit meaning implied. This is something that perhaps we draw from, not based on actual data or evidence, but something that we kind of cull together or manufacture within our brains. And personality, well, it has to do with, how we are, right? What's your personality? What's your makeup? It makes up who you are, maybe even for some of you, your identity as it goes. So the implicit personality theory, then, to extrapolate that out, is an implied perception of your personality, okay, based on not all that concrete of data, based on the indications we might be getting visually or orally or just within our communication with somebody that might not be entirely accurate or that might skew our perceptual process. So, for example, I used the story of the Latina breaking into this luxury automobile in Las Vegas, right? And for me, the way the implicit personality theory worked was as I saw her actions and what she was doing. And what she was doing would look to me like she was trying to break into a car. Now, the implicit personality theory goes through and says, well, if you already evaluate the individual negatively, which I was doing, okay, and if they're doing some kind of activity that could be also evaluated negatively, then their motives must be negative as well. Okay, so there she was trying to break into a car. I immediately defaulted to the concept that she was trying to steal a car, break into it, and steal something out of the car, as opposed to actually rescuing her baby that she had locked into the car along with her keys, right? So the implicit personality theory goes through and says, okay, there's this negative thing about this person and this negative thing about this person, therefore everything else about that person must be negative too. Now, what's interesting about this theory is just the opposite of that is true, because we might go through and see somebody with very positive attributes. We might like their sense of humor. We might think they're very smart. They might be of the same faith that we are. And so as a result of that, the implicit personality theory goes through and attributes more positive traits to this person. And that's problematic as well, because then we don't see the cues. We don't acknowledge the inconsistencies between nonverbal and verbal information that's going on that might be indicative that they are in fact deceiving us. So this is a perceptual process, a perceptual influence that meddles with us both negatively and positively in how we go through and perceive the people that are around us there. The second one is what's called primacy recency effect, or the primacy recency effect. And those are a couple of fancy words to go through and say it's your first impression and or your last impression of that individual. It gets into a barrier where called static evaluation, where we don't give anybody the benefit of the doubt that they could be something different than what we have originally evaluated them as. Okay, again, this is a barrier that clicks in on the interpretation stage, then into the evaluation stage as far as the stages of the perceptual process. The influence comes in and says, let's see what can I come up with here. Your first impression of this individual was not very good. My first impression of the young Latina breaking into the car obviously wasn't very positive, right? And I held on to that while I scoped her out to see what was happening. And I think that's what made it more difficult for me to go through and understand, oh, wait a minute, that's the shrill scream of an infant, and that's a handle to a car seat that I'm seeing through the back window of that car. And then suddenly I'm in this dissonance of, oh, wait a minute, the conclusion that I came to isn't necessarily the truth in terms of what's really going on perceptually, right? So how I first saw her, I had to go through and re-see her again. I had to go through and check that influence. It's called the primacy recency for a reason, because we also hold on to ideas of people in terms of our last impression of them. You've done this. We've all done this at some point. We've gotten into a fight with our significant other. We left them because we had to go to school or work or whatever, the day goes on. And when we come back, we're surprised to find that they are no longer angry with us, or maybe they're surprised to find that we're no longer angry with them, because over the course of the day, we've been able to let it go, and so on and so forth. Okay, well, the recency part of the primacy recency influence on perception is just that. We hang on to that last image, and nobody is the same the way we left them. We're all going through some type of a dynamic influence over the course of our day, right? Well, in lying and deception, this goes through and skews our ability to go through and accurately see if somebody is deceiving us, because we keep holding on to an idea of them, good or bad, in terms of what the primacy recency effect does to us. The third barrier is what's called attribution. And in a sentence, attribution is assigning motive to action, where we subconsciously or consciously go through and assign a motive to a certain action we see going on, just like I did with the Latina. What was her action? Well, she was trying to open the car door without a key, okay, using a device. That was her action. What was the motive that I assigned to her? Well, she's breaking into the car. The motive wasn't she's trying to save her baby, because I had already defaulted to previous stereotypical ideas about what she was doing, right? Yeah, assigning motive to action, attribution theory. So these are three influences that if we don't recognize them and thwart their impact on how we go through and perceive what's going on around us, we will not be able to arrive at an objective evaluation of the people that we're trying to go through and determine whether or not we're being deceived by them, or whether or not they're telling the truth. It works both ways as it goes, okay? So 3 things I'll expect you to remember there. The implicit personality theory, the primacy recency effect, I can't remember that one for some reason, and attribution, all right? Okay, check out the other clips as they pop up.